everyone. Today I will be making some simple copper bands. I'm going to start by unspooling a length of wire, and I'm just going to cut a small section to make it easier to manage. I'm using a 12 gauge half round copper, and I'm just going to take that and start wrapping it around the ring mandrel, about a half size above the final ring size that I'm aiming for. And I'm just going to wrap that a few times to create a simple coil. Once I have that, I'm going to flip it around and make sure each section is actually even, since the mandrel tapers. And I'm just going to get ready to start sawing through. This is actually a method that I kind of struggle with, but I'm trying to get better at. So you might see me fumble a little bit a few times throughout this, but that's okay because practice makes progress. Here you actually see me lose one to the abyss. Oh well. And unfortunately here, I'm doing this out of frame, so you can't really see what I'm doing, but I'm just lining up the ends of the rings that I've sawn through, matching them up to get a seam that I will be soldering in a little bit. One thing that I like to do before I take my rings out to solder is mark the seam with a little bit of Sharpie. Don't worry, it'll burn off under the torch. I just like this to make it easy to find the seams, because if you have a really good tight seam, you're not going to be able to see it very well when you're soldering. So this makes it a little easier to line up my solder once I'm ready to go. So I'm just going to prepare for soldering by painting a little bit of flux onto each ring around the seam to make sure that I have a nice clean area, otherwise the solder won't flow. Next, I'm just going to prepare my solder. I'm just going to take some flush cutters and snip a few pieces and place them next to each ring. And now it's finally time to solder. So I'm just lighting my torch. I love this electric lighter, by the way. And yeah, pretty self-explanatory here, but I do have to apologize because for the rest of this process, my hand is completely blocking the view. And I'm just going to quench these, but unfortunately my flux has gotten a little bit glassy, so my rings are stuck. So I'm just going to take my torch again to reheat those and make them easier to pick back up. Alright, so I have pickled my rings and brushed them with a brass brush. So it's time to clean up the solder seams because you do not want big splotches of silver on copper rings. So I'm just taking a half round file and filing it off. Pretty self-explanatory. The only thing I want to comment on is that I am actually curving the ring slightly as I pass the file over it, just because when you're filing a round object, you don't want to file a straight line. You want to follow that curve. That way it retains its ring shape. So at this point, I actually want to clean up the scratches that have been left behind by the files. So I'm just getting ready to use my Dremel, and I'm adding a silicone bit that is small enough to curve around the inside of the ring. Before I get started using a silicone polisher, however, I do want to get my respirator on, which I always keep in a plastic sealed bag to protect it when it's not in use. Please, if you are getting into metalsmithing, always protect your lungs and wear a respirator when you need to. Despite how it looks at 300% speed, this is a very slow and tedious process which goes on for a long time. So I'm just going to keep cleaning up the inside of the band and filing as necessary to remove excess solder, because I apparently did not get it all off the first time around. I'm not going to show the full process because it can get very boring, and this video is already getting a little long as it is, and I know that process videos aren't the most exciting, so pretty much this is all I'm doing for the next 30 minutes or so. I am also going to take a pass around the outside of the band before I actually get to hammering to stretch it out to the final size. Unfortunately, once I got into the swing of things, I completely forgot that I was making a video and neglected to record myself hammering the ring out to size. I just got really in the zone, but that's okay. It's pretty self-explanatory. I just put the rings onto the mandrel and hammered it out with a rawhide mallet until it was the final size that I wanted. And then I did some final cleanup, and that was pretty much it. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram at mulberrymoons. And have a great day.